I was watching the Testament of Moses on Netflix. Became very interesting for me as I was watching it. What was going on at the back of my mind was more like, so the Moses that everybody knows and talk about actually is a multi-potentialite, is a jack of all trades. Let me explain and let me show that to you. So you find, looking at that story, you find that Moses was described as a shepherd. In fact, he actually started off as a prince. He started off as an Israelite guy. Then he became a prince. Then he ran away and went into the bush and became a shepherd. Now, he became a prophet by reason of God's calling upon his life. So you find that Moses was a shepherd. Shepherd is a specialization. Moses was a writer because if he didn't know how to write, he wouldn't have been able to capture the entire history of the earth, the entire history of human, and to be able to put it together as a collection called the Septuagint. Now, you also find that eventually, because he grew up under princehood, he became an Israelite undercover, and then he became a political champion because he wanted to rescue his nation from the claws of slavery. More like what Martin Luther King and the likes and Nelson Mandela were trying to achieve during their days. So Moses was actually trying to do it at that time. So what you find is that if you look at Moses' life and the kind of things that he was able to do, you will notice that he actually went to each of them one after the other. As a shepherd, that gave him the advantage of leadership. He was able to lead people. He was able to guide people and tell people what to do part-time because he had experience from doing that as a shepherd. As a prince, he was able to learn how to write. Because he learned how to write, he became a knowledge worker who was able to capture knowledge from the beginning of time, even before he was born, till the point where he was able to the point where he died, he was able to capture all of that knowledge. And when I was watching the Testament of Moses, there was a point where when Moses came back to meet the Israelites, and he was asked, but he answered with a very interesting answer. He said something about Joseph, about Abraham, about Jacob, and it's mentioned things about them. And the people were smiling, the people were nodding. And at that point, it became clear to me that Moses, because he had the princehood privilege, he was able to become a knowledge worker. So he was able to harmonize all the years of history. He was able to condense that together into something that became meaningful to people when they were listening to him. Now, I'm explaining this because I need to get to somewhere so that you'll understand how to combine all of your different passions, all of your different skills, all of your different interests into a profitable niche that is uniquely yours. Because over time, what has happened is we that are polymaths, we that are jack of all trades, want to do everything. But the interesting thing is you can actually be everything. But you can be everything in a very systemized manner. Okay, so I've talked about him being a shepherd. I've talked about him being a writer. Let's talk about Moses being a political leader. You find that when he was in the house of Pharaoh, Moses was basically an Israelite undercover. He was learning and taking in things from royalty. And because he was doing that, he was learning strategy. He was learning what it means to develop a strategy. He was learning what it means to talk a certain way, to speak a certain way, to address royalty. He knew in fact, because he grew up with the person who eventually became Pharaoh, when he came back to Israel, he had the insider information that only Moses could possess. Aaron could not have such information. You also find that eventually through his journey, he became a prophet, which is where things like creative intelligence begins to play out. Because he became a prophet, he had access to a creative intelligence that was able to tell him, okay, throw the rod on the floor and I will take care of the rest. And then he threw on the floor and he became a snake. And he swallowed up the snakes of the other magicians. Or as depicted in the Testament of Moses on Netflix, he actually killed the snakes of those other magicians. Now, you will notice all of what I'm sharing here is that the person who Moses became is a combination of all that he is, not just a part of In fact, if I'm going to add here, Moses was also a family man because he had children, he had kids. He was able to play the role of a father, he was able to play the role of a husband. He was husband to the daughter of Jethro, he was father to the kids that he gave birth to. So you find that Moses, even though he's just one example, you find that over time, you will find all of this splattered everywhere. What can we learn from this entire life of Moses? Oh, let's say you are interested in art, you are interested in design, you are interested in, let's say, coaching. So I had a live workshop yesterday with some of the people who were beta testing the course that I'm working on, which is the niche mastery method. I beta tested it with some people yesterday, and they loved what the course was about. They loved what the some of the tasks that they've taken in the course so far. And I'm just going to be using one person's information here. Of course, you don't know the person, so there's privacy here. So teaching. So let's add teaching here. Let's add reading. I know you don't know that reading is a skill. Writing is a skill. For example, I am not so good at writing, even though I love to write. I love to write because that's how I capture, that's how I dump things in my head on paper. But writing is not a super skill of mine. Let's say neuroscience. Let me add behavioral change. So let's say you're also interested in behavioral change. What you'll find is, these are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you are interested in 8 different things. Which of them are you very good at? Now, the way to create a niche out of all of these different things you are interested in, topics. So let's say you are interested in subjects like, let's say, sex therapy. I don't know if that's going to be censored, but... So let's say you're interested in all of. What you will need to do is, first of all, dump everything on paper like this. And then there's a test, there's an assessment test that I'm going to introduce you for you to have access to the course. Actually, it's a free email course that you can get started with right away. But it's not available yet till the middle of April. That's when it's going to be available. So you can simply go to www.dayosamuel.com/waitlist, and it's going to ask you to input your email so that you can be a part of that course once I finish up all the modifications that I got from the workshop yesterday. All right, moving on from there. So if you list all your skills here, what you want to do next is you want to actually narrow down all of these skills into very vital skills that can separate you from everybody. How do you do that? There are 4 tests that you simply need to do. First test is the test of what's the growth potential. How well can you grow if you take this as growth potential? So that will be, you want to judge it on 1. 2 would be a depth of interest. How deeply interested are you in that subject? How much of interest do you have? And the simple thing is, you can literally just rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. So I'm going to show you what that is. And then number 3, you want to rate it on level of comfort. So level of comfort, how comfortable are you talking about it? How comfortable are you identifying with that skill or that interest? And then number 4 will be how excited. So you want to use excitement as the 4th. So let's call it excitement factor. So these will be the 4 things that you are going to be using to judge each of them. So let's say for this art here, let me change my pen. So for art, let's say growth potential will be maybe a 2. Depth of interest, maybe a 4. Level of comfort will be how comfortable am I talking about it? How natural do I feel talking about it? Maybe that will be a 5. And then what's the excitement factor? That will be maybe a 4. Now, notice I'm rating it on a scale of 0 to 10. Then you do the same for design. Design, growth potential may be 3. Depth of interest will be 10. Level of comfort, 10. Excitement factor is 10. Let's say coaching. Coaching is growth potential 10. Depth of interest 10. 10. 10. Teaching 10. 10. 10. 10. Now I'm rating this. I'm just rating it randomly, but also considering a couple of things. So writing, for example, growth potential. Let's say I can grow in writing. How interested am I in writing? 2. Level of comfortability talking about writing. I don't even want to talk about it at all. Or let me put a 1. Then excitement factor. How excited are you about writing? Well, I'm going to put a 4. Now, neuroscience, as you can see, once you begin to access each of them like this, what you find is you eventually find what I call your top 3 skills. And the good part is that this entire assessment, I've actually created a way for you to sort through it, and you can actually get that if you go to dayosamuel.com/waitlist. Again, I'm going to put that in the show notes for this episode. Now, what you find is once you do that assessment, what happens is if your top skills, based on what I've rated here, so let's say this is 40, which of them looks like this is 33. So these 3 will probably be my top 3 skills. Now, this is not exactly correct about me. Okay, so this is just sampling. So that means design, coaching, teaching are my top 3 skills. Let's say based on all of this written here, let's say that is my top 3 skills. Now, what happened to all of these other skills? What happened to art? What happened to neuroscience? What happened to behavioral change? What happened to sex therapy, for example? What happens is all of these other skills now support these your top skills, so that if you are talking about design, in coaching, you can match that with behavioral science. In teaching, you can talk about neuroscience because you understand how information works in the brain. So, for example, right now, you probably may be absorbing this in a very interesting way. Maybe that's because I also understand the neuroscience of education, the neuroscience of taking in information. Maybe that's why. So you find that your top 3 skills now become design, coaching, teaching. Now, if we look back to the story of Moses that I shared earlier on, the fact that Moses could be a shepherd, Moses could write, Moses could serve as a political guy, he could be a prophet, that didn't make sense until Moses was able to apply that to a specific problem. What was the problem Moses applied all of his skills to? Simple. He applied it to liberating, or let's call it the liberation of Israel. So that became the entire thing Moses spent the rest of his life focusing on. Now, notice Moses did not niche. If this is niching down, Moses did not focus on a niche of, okay, I'm going to play just being a shepherd because they say that everybody should niche down. You should niche down. You should niche down. Moses did not focus on that. Moses did not focus on writing as well. Of course, he wrote the 10 Commandments because he is a writer. By the way, some people say it's the finger of God that wrote it. Yes, I agree, it's the finger of God that wrote it. But he wouldn't have been able to tell the story of how the finger of God wrote it if he is not a writer. If he doesn't have the capacity to visualize things and write the actual detail. And of course, the Kabbalion, there are a lot of books that actually add context to the stories. But what I want you to understand is what Moses did was bringing all of his different skills together. He focused it on solving a problem, the liberation of Israel. What you want to do as well is you want to take all of your top 3 skills and you want to identify a specific problem that you are going to be solving. If you can solve that problem for the rest of your life, there is a lot of money to be made. Because the thing is, it's one thing to be very good at something. It's another thing for what you are good at to solve problems for people. But more importantly, it's also another thing for you to be able to monetize that. How do I mean? You'll notice that I've talked about 3 things. There's some, you can be very good at something, which is A, you may be able to find a problem, which is B. But once you are able to monetize it, that becomes C. Once you can create these 3 connections, you can make money for the rest of your life. You can be profitable in any way that you choose. Now, you may be wondering, so how do I do that? How do I know? What you should do is you should actually draw a Venn diagram like this and put design. So this is design here. So this is design. You say coaching here, coaching, and you put teaching here. What you want to start trying to find out or figuring out is what at the overlaps. If you combine design and coaching together, what problem can you solve? If you combine teaching and coaching together, what problems can you solve? Now, design and teaching, it means you probably, so off the top of my head right now, it probably means you can teach design. So it means you can teach design. And coaching and teaching, maybe you can coach teachers or you can teach coaching. I don't know, depending on how you choose. And here, it means you can work with designers, you can coach designers. So maybe coaching designers might be what is here. That could be the problem that you want to solve. And here it could be teach others how to coach. So you can teach others how to coach. And here you are coaching designers. And here you are teaching design. You can see how that comes together to solve problem. Now, once you are able to identify that, what happens is you create a very, very unique niche that takes advantage of your top 3 skills, and that makes you a unique product, a unique person in the market. So the thing is that when you are able to identify these 3 things and you're able to bring it together, what happens is you create what I call a category of one, or a niche of one, where you are the niche, where you are the only person who can do what you can do. Because, of course, what I've combined here right now may resonate with someone else. You may even find 2-3 other persons who have this same combination of skills, but you probably not find them in the same proportion. That is, maybe one person might have coaching as 30, have teaching as 20, have design as maybe a 2 or maybe a 5. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So what you find is you create a way for you to be singled out, unique. You create your own category of one. You create your own niche of one, where you are just the only person who can do exactly the combination of things that you've identified. There's a concept I teach called talent stacking. Now, when I talk about talent stacking, and the good part is I heard this labeling from the creator of Dilbert. Now, for me, talent stacking, I took the concept from blockchain. And if you consider what stacking means, it means you have, so this could be layer 2, layer 0, layer 1. Your most vital skills will always be part of so this is where your top 3 skills, this is where you find your top 3 skills, will be your layer. They are, in blockchain, they call them base layers. So a blockchain example of that will be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a base layer blockchain. You can build on top of it, but you can't break it down further. So it's the base layer. It's the reason why it was the first that it was worked on. It's a base layer blockchain. And because it's a base layer, same thing as your talent, same thing as your skill, same thing as your passions, your interest, the different things that you can do. If you put them together, what happens is you create your base layer. Your base layer talent is that talent that if you find yourself anywhere in the world, you can always shine. You can always play a bigger game. You can always, at least nobody can confuse you, nobody can shake you. That is what your base layer does. Now, you'll notice that all these other talents here, even though you also rated them, what you find is you find top 3. So you find top 3. You find maybe a next, maybe 3, 4 thereabout, and then you find very low scores. You find some that have low scores. Now, for those low scores, what you do is you put them here. Low scores come up here, the mid-range. So the mid-range skills now become part of your talent stack. So what happens is, if you wanted to create your niche, you create your niche based on this base stack here, base layers here, then your mid-range and your low scores begin to add context to these top 3 skills. So when you are teaching, so let's say you are teaching coaching, or let me say you are coaching designers, what happens is you help them understand neuroscience. You bake in neuroscience, you bake in arts. As you are teaching designers, you are helping them understand how art works. So for example, it could be maybe elements of art. You come again, you look at it and say, okay, writing. You say, okay, in order to reach them, you are writing. So none of your skill is actually a waste. All of your skills have a place once you can organize them. And once you can organize them into layer 0, layer 1, layer 3, it becomes easier for you to create a niche. And as you create a niche, what happens is you eventually find that you are the only person that can combine all of these skills the way you are literally combining them. So in my own case, just to tell you a little bit about myself here, what happens is while research, content, and design are my base layers, what happens is I have others like neuroscience, behavioral change, just as I listed here. So I have others like neuroscience, behavioral change. Now, I'm not interested in this, so let me cancel it out. I have neuroscience, behavioral change. I have teaching, coaching. Those are other skills that are on top of this research, content, and design. Now, the interesting thing is that I have created a niche for myself as a research, content, and design strategist. If you literally Google that, you'll probably not be able to find anybody else. I have tried, so maybe you should try. I've literally Googled that, and I've not been able to find anybody else worldwide who is a combination of research, content, and design strategist. Nobody else. So maybe there is a research strategist. Maybe there are content strategists. Of course, content strategist is even a career. Maybe they are design strategists. But one person who is a combination of research, content, and design strategy, the three of them combined together, I've not been able to find. That is where I was able to combine all my different passions into a profitable niche. And I believe each person can do that. Every jack of all trades, every multi-potentialite, every polymath can actually do that. Find the skills that you excel in the most. Use the assessment I've just shared with you now. And if you want that assessment, you can actually go to dayosamuel.com/waitlist, and you'll be able to get access to the course that will help you understand how to utilize the assessment, and again, how to actually use AI like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity to actually figure out the problems that you can solve. I hope that this has been helpful to you. I hope that this is useful to you.